All right, back to Cody Campbell. So this is one of the things he said yesterday. Well, let me go back here. Look at it from the Nebraska lens.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska doesn't have one of these mega boosters who he said yesterday that he has built and sold companies and has made about $15 billion.
then he said right under that, I'm not a dumbass.
Yeah. He's very fascinating and he's very engaging. But if it works at Texas Tech, go from the Nebraska lens. What's the reaction around here? If it works and if it doesn't? Because when I say, are you rooting? You said immediately, yes, I'm rooting for Texas Tech, and you're not alone.
Yes.
But if they succeed, and let's say Texas Tech in the next 3 years is in the playoff.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's enough to deem it successful.
Okay.
I think they have to be they have to be in the national championship, or they have to be in
Joey will be under a lot of pressure because now that they've gone all in, they'll buy a coach. They'll buy Urban.
I think it's been proven that you can make the college football playoff ground roots, like you can build it and you can get there and you can kind of do it whatever you want to call it, traditionally or whatever. If they're spending this amount of money, I think it has to be national champion runner-up at least for us to be like, okay, this can really, this is super effective. So if he does that, if they accomplish that, the reaction will be from not just Nebraska, from everywhere. We need to find our golden goose, and we need to find the money.
So this may be a better. Keep with that thought.
Sure.
If you're Nebraska, are you rooting for Texas Tech to work, or are you like the Georges of the world that are like, you ain't gonna get us. Do what you want, buddy. Spend all the money you want. It ain't gonna happen.
Who do you relate more to?
Yeah, that's probably a better question. But he has a thing.
That's a great question.
He has a thing where. So this is he did mention yesterday that he has spoken to the president many times about the future of college athletics, and he has his ear. By the way, there is a bill that's being introduced today that is actually really good in terms of cleaning up some of the rough edges. It's too much to get into. We'll get you into the weeds. But here's this thing. So his belief is the 4 power conferences should pool their collective rights and generate significantly more revenue. As you know, the Big Ten and the SEC, they control their own brands, their television windows, their own networks. He used a quote last night in his interview because the person that was interviewing was like, you have heard of the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah.
And he said he was told, said, this isn't going to work because why would we share our revenue when we have the product that bears the fruit and others don't? And so then he said, I spent more money. There's another part of what Texas Tech is doing, because Dion spoke about this yesterday, about there should be a salary cap on the Rev. You look at Ohio State, they spent all this money. The teams that spend a lot of money on their roster are playing for the title. Should we set our expectations based on how much your university is spending on football, how much they have devoted of their rev share to football? Because if Nebraska says, yeah, we're only giving football 55%, should we go, okay, so that's the expectations this year? But if they say, this is the year we're at 80%, and I'm just using hypothetical numbers, then we go, 80%, that means that's a playoff, right? Because this is back to the Texas Tech argument.
Sure.
If I'm a Texas Tech booster and my guy who, has he has a lot of oil money and other stuff, if Texas Tech is spending all this money on their roster, shouldn't they win a national championship?
Yes.
Okay, so that's my expectation.
Yeah.
But if Jimmy, Lance Leipold yesterday says, it's going to be a rough year because my AD over there, Travis, he's only given us 40%.
Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, all right, you win 4 games. Good job, Lance.
Well, I think at some point...
We need oil money.
I think at some point, what you're talking about is where does the blame get shifted, or where does the responsibility get shifted? When you have a team that isn't investing, when you have an athletic department that isn't investing enough into football, or as much as you want them to.
That's
you shift the blame on the athletic department. You go, why aren't you doing this? Why are you as a director allowing this to happen? Mm-hmm. But if the athletic director invests a lot into football, then that responsibility shifts to the coach. Because then it's like, hey, you are given the resources. You are given the map. You are given the opportunity. You got to go out and you got to win. This is now on your shoulders. So that's exactly kind of what it's like in the pros, where at some point it's no longer, hey, the GM isn't giving me good players or the GM isn't doing a good job. It's you got to go out and coach. Mm-hmm. Look at the relationship between Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman, right? If the Eagles have a bad year this season, nobody's going to be blaming Nick Sirianni. They're going to be nobody's going to be blaming Howie Roseman. Roseman went out and got the players. Roseman made the investment. Roseman has given the map to Sirianni. He's got to go out and win. It's going to be the same thing in college sports. Now, you posed an interesting question. You said, does Nebraska, and I think you were alluding to the athletic department, does Nebraska want Texas Tech to win? I think
because it kind of goes against everything that Nebraska's current operation stands for, right?
I think just in general across college football, there are a lot of teams who wouldn't want them to win because then it would put a ton of pressure on them to go out and find that money, to go out and contend, because it's going to be if Texas Tech can do it, why can't you do it? And that immediately puts a ton of pressure on a lot of people who probably have pretty good reasons as to why they couldn't do what Texas Tech is doing, but it doesn't matter.
So which team does not fit here? Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Miami, Notre Dame, Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
Yeah.
What is the list? What list is that of, though?
This is Kurt Cignetti said these are the biggest spenders right now in college football. The most expensive rosters. Like Ohio State. They had the most expensive probably Texas had the most expensive roster last year, but Texas made it to the semifinals, so okay. Ohio State won a national championship. Okay. We made a big deal about how much they were spending. The expectations were to win a national title.
And they did it.
They won a national title. Like LSU is an interesting test case. LSU spends a lot on their roster. Are you getting a return on investment?
No.
I'm just wondering, like, moving forward, if the fan expectation, because if I'm committing the dollars, my expectation is what my dollars are giving to you. But if a fan goes, I guess we're not spending much on football.
But
if we're spending a lot, damn right, Brian Kelly, let's go.
But it would suck that. I am interested though with the Texas Tech. What really piques my interest about it is the ROI is winning, right? Like the return on investment is seeing your team win. But at what point is that no longer enough? Because if we're talking like financially, the whole pay to play system of I'm just going to give you money and you're just going to give that money to that player, financially, it's not a great investment. You're not getting any of that money back, right? You're not getting, 5%, of what that player is going to make in perpetuity back to you for doing that. Like you're not getting more money back in your pocket. So the real ROI is because I get to see my team score more points than the other team. But at what point do we run into college football where there are more and more financial experts who are like, this is not a good investment really for your bank account to just give money to players for them to just
that's been the whole, if you were looking at your athletic department as a business,
mm-hmm.
you might have two sports. So you never have looked at it as you don't run it like a normal business, even though it is technically a Fortune 500 company, because you would start cutting, you would doge things that don't return money, and you'd be down to one or two sports. In some places, you might only be down to one sport. So the thing about college athletics is it's an emotional buy.
Mm-hmm.
Most people that root for Nebraska, root for Creighton, went to school there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that you can't be a booster of a school that you didn't go to. Okay? If you want to support that program, you support that program. But that's a big thing in college is, I don't know how you can be a booster. The only people that support the program financially are the people who went to school there. The majority are, but that's not always the case. But it's in a high school and college athletics for a buy to support by advertising that. It's all an emotional buy.
Sure.
It's more emotional than it is a return on investment. But if I'm doing pro, it's a return on investment because I'm supporting the pros. Now you don't have, of course, the college model and the pros, but it's more of I want my team to win. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? If we don't get our, what am I looking? I'm looking to be my enjoyment. And there's a lot of people that will, say, okay, enough is enough. You're not winning enough. But you know what? That person also says, you got to get rid of that coach. I'll help you with his buyout and I'll help you bring in a new guy.
I just wonder if it just sounds like a burstable bubble, like to me.
Oh yeah. It's scary. It's scary. I mean, we've been talking about that for a while, that college athletics is, when is it all going to end? When is the TV money going to disappear? And the next thing you know, you turn left, you turn right, and you got Cody Campbell's of the world.
Who are...
I'd say this will be like looking at Texas Tech from a Nebraska standpoint, this is where now the inbox is going to fill up with Warren Buffett stuff. If Texas Tech can have a guy like this, how come Nebraska can't have a guy like that? How come they can't have one big booster that just bankrolls everything? How come they can't have a Terry Pegula, who is the owner of the Buffalo Sabres, the family, and they basically support financially the Penn State hockey program from top to bottom? I mean, all the finances are from the family.
Well, the Penn State wrestling team has that as well. Like, I will never forget that Mark Manning quote where he goes, if I got to go and get, this amount of money, I got to talk to like a lot of people. If Penn State needs to go and get this money, they talk to one guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's really all, it's crazy in a way that college sports has come down to how rich is your alumni base or how rich is the base of people that care about your team. But that's kind of where we're at.
But hadn't that always been the case in college athletics?
But now it's open. Now it's out in the open. Now it's like it is. Well, now you have in the past, right? Like these under the table transactions that happened and the money that was coming through. You didn't have guys having interviews with USA Today saying, "Oh yeah, I am completely bankrolling and helping my college football team pay for these players." Like it's so much more out in the open, and it's.
So maybe this is the case. Nebraska was more successful when you couldn't cheat, but they found a way to have county scholarships and host families.
I don't know about. I can't really speak on that, but what I can speak to is that
being a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah, so. but Nebraska isn't in a bad position by any means. But
no, financially because they're a standalone from the rest of the university. They're actually in a good spot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hamstrings them because there's cuts on the campus in academics, and people push back on athletics, even though athletics has their own pool of money.
But Nebraska isn't necessarily. They don't have. I think people would love for people to talk about Nebraska the way we're talking about Texas Tech as this. Hey, they're spending all this money. They're making new waves. They're trying to break the mold. They're trying to be a top team. They're trying to win a national championship. And it's kind of rare and random in a way to be one of those teams, to just have one of those people exist and then have those people willing to give a lot of money in order to do that is not, it's no small potatoes. And it's a weird thing though, where we sit here and we go, man, I wish we had that. And why don't we have that?
Oh, and every program that doesn't, they're looking at Texas Tech. That's why I asked the question, how many people will be rooting for Texas Tech or how many people are like, I hope they fail miserably?
I think a lot of fans will root for Texas Tech because they want Texas Tech's success to trigger their athletic department to try and do something like that, to try and find the money to spend it. And I think there are a lot of athletic departments who don't want Texas Tech to win because they don't want to be triggered and they don't want to go through that stress and they don't want to have that added extra pressure of trying to find that.